I clearly remember the first divorce I ever experienced in my family. If I remember correctly, I was about 11 or 12 years old. You might be wondering if it were my parents or even my grandparents. Divorce occurred between my aunt and uncle. This union had produced no children, so my cousins and I were treated by my mother's eldest sister as surrogate children. Oh, how she loved us, and we loved her. Every year, either during New Year's Eve week or a week in summer, my brother Jeff and I would fly to Los Angeles to visit our aunt and uncle. I remember making a visit shortly after their divorce was announced. My aunt and uncle owned a palatial house off of Chevy Chase Drive in Glendale. My aunt had moved to one side of the house, while my uncle had moved to the other. The bedroom Jeff and I stayed in was on my soon-to-be ex-uncle's side of the house. Both my aunt and uncle worked very hard to ensure we had a pleasant trip. I don't remember any bickering, and everything appeared as though it were just normal. We went on our usual excursions to Marineland, Disneyland, visited the floats early in the morning before the Rose Parade. One night, we even walked the Altadena neighborhood where George Bailey, the famous ice cream magnate who decorated his home at Christmas time with over 10,000 lights, lived. On this trip, the neighborhoods of the rich and the famous in Beverly Hills. I distinctly remember slowing down at one house and my aunt telling us that it belonged to Lucille Ball. As we sat in my aunt's Mercedes, gawking at the house, the door opened up, and Lucille Ball came strolling out in her big pink bathrobe and fuzzy slippers to pick up her newspaper. As she bent over, looking across the street at us, then standing erect with her red hair blazing in the early morning sunshine, smiled and waved at us. We even ate at our favorite cafeteria, Beatles. Before leaving on the trip, our parents had warned us to avoid any conversation regarding the divorce. Jeff and I knew our visit wasn't normal despite the heroic overtures made by my aunt and uncle. It just felt awkward. Stay tuned. In this episode of Harvest, we'll explore what the Bible has to say about divorce. Divorce is often likened as experiencing a living death. It isn't something anybody wants, especially God. When God instructed Moses to write both the moral and ceremonial codes, he gave the explicit directions for the reason of divorce. We find God's ruling on this matter in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 to 4.
When a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. And if the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and giveth it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house, or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife, after that she is defiled, for that is abomination before the Lord.
The uncleanliness God is referring to is infidelity, and it doesn't just apply to a wife. God doesn't work that way. Essentially, what's good for the goose is also good for the gander. Divorce was never in God's plan for marriage. We can read a discussion Jesus had with a group of Pharisees on this subject in Matthew chapter 19, verses 4 to 8.
Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Therefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning it was not so.
However, in a sinful world, Jesus recognized divorce is a reality. Divorce severs a relationship that was intended to last a lifetime, and it leaves a wake of destruction and devastation for everyone that's caught up in it. Sadly, people today get divorced for all sorts of reasons. You hear of constant bickering, money problems, work-related stress, issues that impact the marriage, a lack of commonality as time goes by, sexual incompatibility, whatever that means, and adultery. The Bible gives only one reason for divorce: infidelity, also known as adultery. If a spouse chooses to have an affair and betrays the most intimate of trusts, God understands why divorce becomes an option, and He allows it in that case. Jesus is the one that instructed Moses to write the ruling in Deuteronomy. In his earthly ministry, he had a discussion with Pharisees about this very topic. Jesus simplified the divorce code. We can read his simplification in Matthew 19, verse 9.
And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery.
It's important for us to understand that even in the case of adultery, God is not demanding the divorce. It takes a strong, loving, and forgiving spouse to say that they're willing to work through the pain of sexual betrayal, but there may be hope for the marriage. If both parties are open to making a new start, God delights to see healing and reconciliation. God has done all in His power to reconcile Himself to us. We read this in Romans chapter 5, verse 8.
But God commendeth His love toward us, in that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
God rejoices when we do all in our power to reconcile and keep our families together. A Christian family therapist can provide family counseling to work through the various issues that will arise. A counselor can provide tools family can use that will bring about healing and hope. Now, some might be wondering about divorce for physical, sexual, verbal, or even psychological abuse. I wish to acknowledge that we live in an imperfect world where people can seem just fine on the outside, but turn selfish and angry behind closed doors. We read in Colossians chapter 3, verses 18 and 19.
Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as it is fit in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives, and be not bitter against them.
While the Bible does not provide grounds for divorce in this situation, I believe that you have a right to protect yourself and your children from an abusive spouse or a relationship that's abusive. The best case would be that the abusive partner would seek God's help and get the necessary counseling to help them heal. There is a persisting professional myth that has now become an urban myth. The myth says abusers were once victims. However, a 2018 Cambridge University study found that only 35% of male abusers had actually been victims, and in females, only 9%. It's important to understand abusers want power over their victims because they feel powerless themselves. Abusers don't risk becoming abusive until they're confident their spouse won't leave, and this is often accomplished through marriage or the birth of a child. Placating an abuser in an attempt to reduce tension and the abusive acts rarely works. From a biblical perspective, each spouse is to love the other the way that they would love their own bodies. We read in Ephesians 5:25, and 1 Peter 3:7.
Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church, and gave himself for it. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife, as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered.
The absolute worst-case scenario in an abusive relationship would be a separation where the leaving spouse remains faithfully married, yet moves away from his or her abusive spouse for protective purposes. If we return to the story of my aunt and uncle, my now ex-uncle, a few years after the divorce, came to my aunt remorseful and told her that he wished that they had never divorced. My aunt never remarried, and they maintained a very close friendship for the rest of their lives. Even after my uncle chose to remarry, my aunt included his new wife as her friend. At my aunt's funeral in 2012, I remember seeing my uncle stand over her coffin with tears in his eyes. I believe God longs for families to be loving, safe environments, and He provides only one reason for divorce: adultery. Do you believe?
This has been a special presentation of Harvest with your host, Dr. Michael John Cookenmaster. Thanks for watching. You may watch Harvest two ways. On YouTube, be sure to subscribe at Harvest Ministries, or on Facebook through Dr. Cookenmaster's page. Be sure to like, comment, and share. See you next time.